Throughout time, generation after generation has risen up and made their mark on the world. Each has faced great challenges, and each has been a part of writing a new chapter in the human story. Today, our generation is coming of age at one of the most critical moments in history. We are waking up to who we are and realizing that we have a story like no generation before.
We are the internet generation.
Generation we.
I've heard the millennials. I've heard post-baby boom, baby boom boom.
We are the Facebook generation. The I generation.
Generation Y.
Maybe it's because we're at a Y in the road.
Our generation can bring very positive things as well as negative.
We are creative,
courageous,
collaborative. We're the largest young people generation that's ever existed.
We are a sleepless generation.
anxious,
Overstimulated.
Materialistic.
Our generation spends a lot of time in front of the computers.
A busy, way too busy generation.
thoughtful,
Transnational.
we share, dissatisfied but optimistic.
Our generation has the unique distinction of living at a moment at the crossroads, where the gifts of the last 250 years has given us tremendous access. The internet, my iPhone, the ability to be all over the world. And at the same time, the costs of those things are catching up with us and are catching up with our generation a lot more than with our parents' generation.
In the last 100 years, we have consumed more natural resources than in human history up to that point combined.
We have completely outpaced ourselves population-wise. We've gone from 1 billion people about 150 years ago
to 7 billion people in such a short amount of time.
I think some of the biggest challenges that we're facing that our generation has to deal with is climate change, because it affects a lot of other problems that we're facing.
You know, if we keep drilling for oil everywhere and blowing up everything for coal and, you know, poisoning the water supply, this earth will not sustain us, the human race, life, for much longer.
We are forgetting that we depend on the land for everything, and in that forgetting are destroying a lot more, a lot faster.
Globally, wealth is being more and more polarized. There's fewer and fewer people owning more and more resources and more people who don't have any.
We're facing corruption, greed at the highest level of authority and leadership.
We talk about this financial recession that we've been in. We've been in a social recession way longer than that.
People's homes are getting foreclosed every day. People don't have access to jobs. Mostly communities of color and low-income communities that already are at a disadvantage are not having access to a lot of the things that we should have had access to years ago.
I think with the challenges being so great, it has driven a lot of people, young people, into feeling very helpless.
Growing up, I didn't know my roots, I didn't know where I came from, I didn't know my history, which led me to consume mainstream media easily, and it became my identity.
Everything's trying to get sold now to youth, and that doesn't really allow them to find inner happiness, and it's just trying to use objects to make them feel good or okay or some kind of pleasure that doesn't last very long.
I see all my peers getting caught in many distractions, and we've reached a point, I feel like, in our history that we don't have time for that anymore.
Because we're at this turning point on the planet, this shift on the planet, we're literally at this place where the notion of the best of times and the worst of times really comes alive right now.
This whole generation can kind of feel that there's something going on. We can feel that there's a crisis, and we're ready to do whatever we can to fix it.
We're at that point where you have to work now hard, very, very hard, but to restore that balance.
You mess with things that we love, like our earth and our people, it activates us.
Generations and people are waking up and saying that enough is enough.
We are in the transition, and we are the pieces of the puzzle of this transition.
This generation is making itself known because it's got a lot more tools to do that.
We have access to so much more cultural diversity, knowledge, and skills. The world feels a lot closer together.
The amount of information that can travel between one another in this generation is just amazing.
In some ways, the internet is like humanity getting a central nervous system where we can share information all together.
And we can connect to youth that are all over the planet. So we are also a generation who has the ability to be a global generation, really for the first time.
We are able to transcend boxes. We're able to work across lines of difference. We're able to see the value in diversity.
We are showing how fun it is to actually get involved. And by you being able to see that you have an impact, that you actually have the power to change your community, that's exciting to me.
We have the energy, we have the inspiration, and we've got the numbers.
We are trying to make this transition. These tools that we have at our disposal could be used for some really powerful movements.
Movements that could have taken a generation to come to a head, you know, are like happening in a week now.
There's thousands, millions of movements around the world of people who are sensing that there's something wrong and are now starting to build the movements together.
What we as young people in this generation have the potential to bring is being able to connect the dots.
Environmental, which affects the political, which affects the social, which affects the economic.
Equal employment rights.
Food justice.
Job security.
Immigration.
Climate justice.
Access to education.
Women's empowerment.
Nature's rights.
They're all interconnected.
I'm seeing those bridges come together, that synergy between organizations that before thought there was nothing in common.
We are ultimately all working towards systemic change. Somos una generación que estamos unidos por nuestra lucha, por lo que estamos perdiendo y también por lo que queremos ganar.
What we're talking about is really a global shift in the way we think about everything we do. We have all the technology and resources to do this. All it's going to take is people realizing that we need to do it now.
We are writing a different story than the one we've been led to believe is inevitable.
When we look back in 30 years, are we going to be filled with regret? Or are we going to be filled with pride?
This is a moment in history that we are all involved in, and we could look back at it and say, I was there.
We have that spark, that ignition to just like, no matter what's thrown up in our way, we're going to get back up and we're just going to keep on going. And that is the story of our generation.
We live at a time when our lives and actions matter more than ever before. What will our legacy be?